As biologist such and such has documented, deep dives present a challenge for seals and other marine animals. A seal must exert enough energy to propel itself hundreds of meters downward while keeping its heart rate low enough that it doesn't run out of oxygen while underwater. A seal moves its flippers as little as possible on a deep dive, gliding to conserve energy. So they need to, there's a challenge, that's the claim, that seals lose a lot of energy pushing downwards. So, for example, a seal moves its flippers as little as possible, or thus, it's cause and effect, explaining why they use their flippers as little as possible. Probably better to say cause effect. So in the first place, no, there's no ordering here of events. On the other hand, it's not contrasting. This is an example of a seal, how it conserves energy to overcome the challenge, which is the first sentence claim. For this reason, yeah, I think that's going to be right. In comparison, we're not really comparing anything. So C, we don't even have an illustrative example here. Thus, or for this reason, is correct. To explore how blinking affects social interactions, Dutch researchers observed interactions between human speakers and listeners, animated human faces on a screen. The researchers found that when the listeners blinked slowly, the speakers tended to talk for less time. Quicker blinks were associated with longer talking times. Okay, this is going to be a sort of a contrasting. Slow blinkers talk less time. However, quicker blinkers, longer talking times. For example, no. Specifically, that's another example. Firstly, it's not an ordering event. By contrast, that's a contrasting transition. That's going to be right. In 1885, Chinese-born California resident Mary Tape became a hero of the Asian American civil rights movement. In January of that year, she won an anti-discrimination case in the California Supreme Court. In April, she wrote an open letter criticizing her local Board of Education for discrimination. Both actions are remembered today as historic stands. So, in addition, if they're both acts are remembered today, we're talking about one act and then a second act. So, in addition, they're two different events. Later, could be later, right? The other option is it's sequential. First we do one, then we do two. In April, this is in January, this is in April. That was the other thought. Could be later. In fact, that probably will turn out to be the answer. For instance, it's not an example. It's not in other words, and it's not rather contrasting. It is later. So it's not so much an additive point as it sets up as sequential from January to April. During a 2021 launch, Rocket Lab's Electron rocket experienced an unexpected failure. Its second stage booster shut down suddenly after ignition. Instead of downplaying the incident, the CEO publicly acknowledged what happened and apologized for the loss of the rocket's payload. So, instead of, I would put a contrasting idea in there, but instead of is already contrasting. So would I say, however, instead of playing down? No, I don't think so. After, indeed, it's not really emphasis, and it's not a comparison. It's afterward. Afterward, instead of downplaying the incident, the CEO publicly acknowledged what happened. That's going to be the most reasonable transition word here. A little bit hard one to predict ahead of time there, but we can then, again, in the absence of that, we can use our answer choices to help us out. If we sort of have the idea, but we can't put our finger on it, the answers can help us put a finger on it and decide which one's correct. In 1891, dancer and choreographer such and such performed her celebrated serpentine dance, artfully twirling her long flowing skirt to create striking visual effects. In 1896, cinema pioneers Auguste and Louis Lumière made a groundbreaking short film of Fuller's dance. So she did this dance in 1891 and it was recorded. So this seems to be chronological. So after. However, it's not contrasting. In conclusion, it's not the end. Later in 1896. That would be correct. In other words, we're not restating something. It's not in other words.